Are Immigration Laws from the Viewpoint of National Eugenics by Professor Robert Orr, of Harvard University, January 1912. How far do our present immigration laws enable us to exclude those aliens who are physically, mentally, and morally undesirable for parenthood? Those whose coming here will tend to produce an inferior, rather than a superior American race. Those who, in other words, are eugenically unfit for race culture. We, in the United States, have an opportunity which is unique in history for the practice of eugenic principles. Our country was founded and developed by picked men and women, and today, by selecting our immigrants through proper legislation, we have the power to pick out the best specimens of each race, to be the parents of our future citizens. The social responsibility which rests upon this country in this matter is overwhelming. We may decide upon what merits, physical, intellectual, or moral. The fathers and mothers of American children shall be selected, but we have left the choice almost altogether to the selfish interests, which do not care whether we want the immigrants they bring, or whether the immigrants will be the better for coming. Steamship agents and brokers all over Europe and Eastern Asia are today deciding for us the character of the American race of the future. It is no argument against practicing eugenic ideas in the selection of our alien immigrants to say that the New England country towns are full of hopelessly degenerate Native Americans, who are inferior, mentally, morally, physically to the sturdy peasants of Europe. The degeneracy of our country native stock is probably chiefly due to the drawing off of the stronger and more capable men and women to the cities, to prolonged inbreeding, and to the continued reproduction of feeble-mindedness, which is rife in many of our country districts. It will not help to reduce the number of all native degenerates, if we admit alien degenerates. National eugenics, for us, means the prevention of the breeding of the unfit native, as well as the prevention of the immigration, and of the breeding after admission of the unfit alien. Careful about importing cattle, careless about importing men. Should we not exercise at least the same care in admitting human beings that we are now exercising in relation to animals, to insect pests, or to disease germs? Yet it is actually true that we are today taking more pains to see that a Hereford bull or a Southdown ewe, imported for the improvement of our cattle, are sound and free from disease than we take in the admission of an alien man or woman who will be the father and mother of American children. We do not hesitate to prohibit the importation of cattle from a foreign country, where a serious cattle disease is prevalent. It is only in very extreme cases, indeed, that we have ever taken such a step in connection with the importation of aliens. Yet there are certain parts of Europe from which no aliens should be allowed to enter this country, for reasons which are eugenically of the first importance. Our present laws aim to exclude some 21 classes of mentally, physically, morally, and economically undesirable aliens. On paper the list of the excluded classes is long and formidable, and seems more than sufficient to accomplish our eugenic purposes. But the fact is that careful and unprejudiced students of immigration agree that these laws do not keep out the unfit so as to preserve the status quo, to say nothing of promoting eugenic improvement. We already have an army of probably not less than 150,000 feeble-minded in the United States, of whom only about 10% are in institutions, the rest being free to propagate their kind. And of those in institutions, the large proportion are kept there only temporarily, being at liberty for much of the time during their reproduction period. The same is true of thousands of criminals, whom we shut up for varying periods of time, but allow, in the intervals when they are out of prison, to populate the world with children, much of whose inheritance is criminal. We are today legalizing the begetting of criminal children, by failing to give permanent custodial care to habitual criminals. Further, there are over 150,000 insane in the institutions of the United States alone, and of these many have already left offspring to perpetuate their insanity. In spite of this appalling situation, appalling from the standpoint of mere sentiment, and of mere philanthropy, doubly appalling from the standpoint of eugenics, we have been admitting alien insane and alien imbeciles, and alien epileptics and alien criminals, partly because of a lax administration of the law under former administrations, partly because the law is incapable, under existing conditions, of effective enforcement. The disproportionate increase of alien insane, of alien imbeciles, of alien criminals, and many other facts which may be ascertained by any person who is interested in this question, shows that, as just stated, our immigration laws do not now enable us to preserve the status quo. Sir Francis Galton has clearly shown that each married degenerate produces on the average one child who is as degenerate as himself or herself, and others in whom the taint is latent, but liable to appear in a succeeding generation. Further, it is well known that imbeciles have larger families than normal persons, and that they also have a large number of illegitimate children. Parenthood on the part of all these classes of persons, native or alien, is a crime against the future. To admit to this country the feeble-minded, the insane, the epileptic, the habitual criminal, those afflicted with hereditary diseases, is no less a crime against the future. The ideal selection of our immigrants would be possible only if we could have a fairly complete history, running back a few generations, showing the hereditary tendencies of each alien. This is impracticable, so far as the immediate future is concerned. But there are some things we can do. We can insist that each alien, on landing here, should undergo a very thorough mental and physical examination at the hands of our public health and marine hospital service surgeons. These examinations would involve stripping to the skin of each alien, the usual physical examination for physical defects, mental tests, tests for syphilis, and similar precautions. Is this too much to demand when the welfare of the human race is at stake? I have seen thousands of aliens landed, and I have marveled at the skill with which our surgeons are now able, by the most superficial examination as the aliens file by, at the rate of several a minute, to detect some of the physical, and even some of the mental defects which put these aliens into one or another of the classes which may be excluded. But such a superficial examination is all wrong. It is nothing short of a crime to admit people, as often happens in a rush season, at the rate of 3,000, 4,000 or 5,000 in one day at Ellis Island. On April the 11th, 1910, 7,931 immigrants were inspected by the medical officers. Think of that. And these medical officers were supposed to detect any mental and physical defect which might exclude. I believe that we ought to limit the number of aliens who shall be landed in one day to a certain number which could reasonably well be carefully inspected. We ought largely to increase the number of the surgeons detailed for that most important work of inspecting arriving aliens. We ought to enlarge the accommodations at some of our immigrant stations, in order that this work might be properly carried out. Again, we can go a long way toward the accomplishment of our object by increasing the fines which the steamship companies now pay when they bring over an alien who is found, on our own examination here, to be an idiot, imbecile, epileptic, or suffering from a loathsome or dangerous disease which could have been detected at the port of departure. The fine is now only $100. The steamship companies pay little attention to the provision. They run the chances of having such aliens detected on landing, and in some cases they insure themselves against possible loss by obliging the alien to deposit $100 when he buys his ticket. Now if we increase this fine to $500, and that is none too large, the steamship companies would themselves, without expense to us, make a much more thorough examination abroad before sailing,